The conference room on Axis Prime Station fell silent as Premier slammed his fist against the table. The leader's scales turned a deep crimson, a clear sign of rage among his people. Across from him, Supreme Commander of the Empire remained perfectly still, but his three eyes narrowed to slits. "This is pointless," hissed. "Your empire continues to violate our borders. We will not accept empty promises." High Arbiter, the elderly diplomat who had served the Galactic Assembly for 40 cycles, raised one thin hand. His voice carried the weight of decades spent preventing wars. "Please, Premier, we have been negotiating for only 3 days. Surely we can find common ground." His voice came out low and dangerous. "Common ground, the collective attacks our mining operations and speaks of peace. They are liars and thieves." In the observation gallery above the main floor, Ambassador Helen Carter watched the proceedings with growing concern. She had seen hundreds of diplomatic meetings during her 20 years of service, first on Earth and now among the stars. This one was going badly. "They will declare war before the week ends," said Counselor, standing beside her. There was a tall, muscular being whose species had a reputation for aggression that rivaled humanity's own. "I have seen this pattern before. Both sides came here only to say they tried peace. They want war." Helen did not disagree. The tension between the collective and the Empire had been building for years. Both controlled valuable sections of space, and both believed they had legitimate grievances. But legitimate grievances had started countless wars throughout galactic history. "Perhaps," Helen said carefully, "but we had to try." Turned to look at her with his yellow eyes. "Your people understand this better than most. Humans know that some conflicts cannot be resolved with words." Helen had heard this sentiment many times since humanity joined the galactic community 3 years ago. Everyone knew about Earth, the death world where everything was trying to kill you. They knew about human history, filled with wars and violence. They knew that humans had turned their entire planet into a fortress before they even reached the stars, building weapons that could crack worlds. The other species respected humans. Some feared them. Most simply accepted that humans were dangerous and should be treated with caution. "That is exactly why we sent a different kind of representative this time," Helen said. "Look confused. I read the roster. No human military observers. No security forces beyond standard station guards. You sent only yourself and one other." "Yes, an insult perhaps, to show you do not take this conflict seriously." Helen smiled. "Not at all. We take this very seriously. That is why we sent Commander Daniel Price." "A commander's," confusion deepened, "but I saw no military insignia, no weapons. He arrived 3 days ago and has done nothing but sit quietly in the back of the room. I assumed he was a junior aide." "He is a commander, but not the kind you are thinking of," Helen explained. "Commander Price is a peacekeeper. All your representatives keep peace. That is their purpose." "No," Helen said gently. "Daniel is a peacekeeper. It is different." Before could ask what she meant, the situation below deteriorated further, stood abruptly, his delegation rising with him. "We are finished here. The Empire refuses to negotiate in good faith. The collective will defend itself by any means necessary." Stood as well. "Then we are at war. The Empire does not make threats, we make promises." High Arbiter looked stricken. "Please, both of you, sit down. We can still find a solution." But neither leader was listening. Their delegations were already moving toward the exits, speaking rapidly into communication devices. Within hours, their fleets would receive orders. Within days, beings would start dying. Helen felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped it would not come to this, but she had learned long ago that hope was not a strategy. Then a voice cut through the chaos. It was not loud, it did not shout or command, but somehow it made everyone in the room stop and turn. "Excuse me." The man who spoke had been sitting in the back corner for 3 days. Most of the delegates had forgotten he was there. He was not tall by human standards and certainly not by galactic ones. His hair was brown and cut short. His clothes were simple, the dark blue uniform of human diplomatic services with no medals or decorations. He wore no weapons. Commander Daniel Price stood slowly and walked toward the center of the room. His movements were unhurried. He looked at Premier, then at Supreme Commander. "I have a question," Daniel said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "May I ask it before you leave?" Scales were still deep red with anger. "We are done talking, human." "I understand, but I have been listening for 3 days, and there is something I do not understand. It will only take a moment." Studied the human with his 3 eyes. "Speak quickly." Daniel nodded his thanks. Premier, your people need the mineral deposits in the contested systems. Your economy depends on them, is that correct? Hesitated, surprised by the direct question. Yes, those systems were hours long before they arrived. And Supreme Commander, Daniel continued, turning to the leader, your empire needs secure borders. You cannot have an aggressive force controlling the space between your territory and the galactic core. Is that correct? His eyes narrowed further. They have proven they cannot be trusted. They must be contained. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be thinking. The entire room waited, though no one was quite sure why. There was something about the way this human stood, the way he looked at both leaders. It was not threatening, but it was not weak either. So you both need something, Daniel said finally, and you both believe the only way to get what you need is through war, because you have tried talking and it has not worked. Obviously snapped, which is why we are leaving. I understand, Daniel said again, but before you go I need to ask something else. How many people will die in this war? The question hung in the air. It was simple, direct, but neither leader answered immediately. That is war, said coldly. Death is inevitable. Yes, Daniel agreed, but how many? Can you give me a number, approximately? Scales began to shift, the red fatting slightly. Tens of thousands, perhaps, in the early stages. And if the war continues, if it spreads? Hundreds of thousands, admitted, perhaps more. Daniel nodded slowly. And do you know their names, the ones who will die first? The question was strange. Both leaders looked at the human with confusion. One asked, the soldiers and civilians who will die in the first battles, Daniel explained. His voice remained gentle, but there was something underneath it now, something that made the delegates in the room feel uncomfortable. Do you know their names? Have you met them? Do they have families? Of course they have families, said. What is your point, human? Daniel looked at him for a long moment. My point is that in about 6 hours, you will both give orders that will kill beings whose names you do not know. Beings who woke up this morning thinking they might live to see tomorrow. And you are making this choice because you could not sit at a table for more than 3 days. The silence that followed was different from before. It was heavier, colder. This is not your concern, human, said, but his voice had lost some of its anger. You are right, Daniel said. It is not my concern. I am just a peacekeeper. I have no authority here, but I think you should know something before you leave. One asked. Daniel's eyes moved between both leaders. I have spent 3 days listening to you talk. I have read the reports of your border disputes going back 10 years. I have studied the history of both your species, and I believe I understand what is really happening here. You understand nothing, said. Perhaps, Daniel admitted, but I would like to try. If you will give me one more day, I think I can help you find a solution that does not require hundreds of thousands of deaths. Will you give me that much time, one day? The two leaders looked at each other, then at the calm human standing before them. There was something unsettling about his certainty, about the way he spoke about death as if it was something he understood intimately. In the observation gallery, leaned toward Helen. What kind of peacekeeper is he? Helen's expression was difficult to read, the kind that scares me more than any soldier I have ever met. Below, Premier sat down slowly. After a moment, Supreme Commander did the same. One day, human, said, but if you waste our time, the Empire will remember. Daniel bowed his head slightly. Thank you, I promise not to waste it. As the human walked back to his seat, every delegate in the room watched him with new eyes. They had come expecting to witness the start of a war. Instead, they had just seen something they could not quite name, something that made them wonder what kind of being could stop two armies with nothing but questions. And in that moment, they began to understand why humanity had chosen this particular representative. Not because he was harmless, but because he was something far more dangerous than any warrior could be. The next morning, the conference room looked different. Commander Daniel Price had requested a change in the setup. Instead of 2 long tables facing each other like battle lines, there was now a circular arrangement. No one sat at the head. No one had a position of dominance. Premier arrived first, his scales a cautious orange. Supreme Commander came moments later, his 3 eyes studying the new arrangement with suspicion. Neither spoke as they took their seats. Daniel entered last, carrying a simple data pad. He sat down and looked at both leaders with the same calm expression he had worn the day before. Thank you for coming back, he said. I know this is difficult for both of you. You have one day, human, reminded him. We are here because we gave our word, nothing more. I understand. Daniel placed his data pad on the table. I want to start by asking you both something. When did the border disputes begin, the very first one? Scales rippled. 12 years ago. The Empire expanded into the sector without authorization. We had authorization, countered immediately. The sector was unclaimed space under galactic law. It was not unclaimed. Our survey teams had filed preliminary reports, which gave you no legal standing. The space was open. Daniel listened to them argue for several minutes. He did not interrupt. He simply watched, his eyes moving between the two leaders. Finally, he raised one hand. I read those reports, Daniel said, all of them. Survey data, legal filings, communications between your governments. Would you like to know what I found? Both leaders looked at him warily. The survey team filed their reports 3 days late, Daniel continued, because their ship had engine trouble. They sent a priority message explaining the delay, but it was never delivered. Do you know why? Scales shifted. No. Because the message relay station between your territory and the assembly had a malfunction, a computer error. It was fixed 2 weeks later, but by then, the Empire had already filed their claim to the sector. The claim was technically legal because no other filing existed in the system. His middle eye widened slightly. We knew nothing of this. I believe you, Daniel said, and the team had no way of knowing their message failed to send, so when the claim was approved, they believed you had stolen their discovery, and when they protested, you believed they were trying to cheat the system. The room was quiet. Both leaders were processing this information. A computer error, said slowly. 12 years of conflict because of a computer error. The beginning, yes, Daniel agreed, but that is not the only thing I found. He activated his data pad. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing a map of the disputed territories. Red and blue zones marked areas of conflict. Over the past 12 years, there have been 63 border incidents between your people, Daniel said. Some minor, some serious. I reviewed all of them. Would you like to know what pattern I discovered? Neither leader spoke, but they were listening intently now. Almost half of the incidents occurred within 1 week of scheduled peace talks, Daniel continued. And in 80% of those cases, the incidents happened in locations that made diplomatic resolution more difficult. Lined forward, what are you suggesting, human? I am not suggesting anything yet. I am telling you what the data shows. Daniel manipulated the display. 3 years ago, your governments were close to a treaty. The talks were progressing well. Then a transport was destroyed near the border, killing 73 civilians. Do you remember? Scales darkened. Of course, it was an attack. It destroyed the peace process. We did not attack that transport, said coldly. Your own investigation could not prove our involvement. That is correct, Daniel said. The investigation found no proof, but it also found something interesting. The transport's route had been changed at the last minute. Someone sent new navigation coordinates that put the ship directly into a patrol area where forces were conducting live fire exercises. Yes, said, because we received intelligence that a safer route had been established. Intelligence from whom? Daniel asked quietly. The Premier hesitated. An anonymous source. It was as legitimate. Was it, or did someone want that transport in that specific location at that specific time? Daniel's voice remained gentle, but his eyes were sharp. Someone who benefited when the peace talks collapsed. His 3 eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. You are accusing us of deception. No, Daniel said, I am accusing someone of deception, but I do not think it was either of you. He changed the holographic display. Now it showed economic data, trade routes, and financial records. Both of your governments spend enormous amounts of money on border security, Daniel explained. Patrols, weapons, defensive installations. That money goes to contractors, manufacturers, and logistics companies. Many of those companies operate in neutral space, doing business with multiple species. Watch the data scroll past. What is your point? My point is that some very wealthy beings have been profiting from your conflict for 12 years, Daniel said, and every time you get close to peace, something happens to push you back toward war. Do you think that is coincidence? The two leaders looked at each other. The hostility between them had not disappeared, but something had changed. Doubt had entered the room. The Syndicate said slowly. They control most of the weapons manufacturing in this sector. They do, Daniel confirmed, and their profits have increased by 400% since your border disputes began. I have financial records showing payments to information brokers, smugglers, and individuals in both your governments. Stood abruptly, you are saying we have traitors. I am saying you have been manipulated, Daniel corrected. Both of you. For 12 years, someone has been making sure you stay angry at each other, making sure every attempt at peace fails, making sure the weapons keep flowing and the money keeps coming. The room fell silent again, but this silence was different. The anger between the two leaders had shifted. It was no longer directed at each other. Can you prove this? Asked. I have evidence that strongly suggests it, Daniel said, but proof in a legal sense would require a formal investigation. However, I can tell you with certainty that your conflict serves interests that are not your own. He deactivated the holographic display and looked at both leaders. You asked me yesterday what my purpose was here. I am a peacekeeper. My job is not to take sides. My job is to help people see clearly when anger and fear cloud their judgment. So I spent 3 days listening to you argue, and then I spent 3 nights reviewing data, and here is what I see. Daniel paused, making sure both leaders were listening. I see 2 governments that have legitimate concerns. I see 2 species that have been hurt and believe they cannot trust each other. But I also see 2 leaders who are about to send their people to die because they cannot see past their anger. And that anger is exactly what someone else wants you to feel. Sat down slowly. His scales had turned a pale green, the color of deep thought among his people. Even if what you say is true, the Premier said quietly, even if we have been manipulated, the problems still exist. We still need those mineral rights, the still need secure borders. Knowing that others profit from our conflict does not solve anything. You are right, Daniel agreed. Understanding the problem is not the same as solving it, but it is the first step. He looked at Supreme Commander. If you knew with certainty that the collective was not trying to threaten your borders, would you still need to go to war? Consider the question, if we had security guarantees, real ones, not political promises. Daniel turned to, and Premier, if you could access the minerals you need without violating territory, would that be acceptable? Obviously, but how? The richest deposits are in the systems they control. Are they, Daniel asked, or are the richest deposits in the systems you are both fighting over, which neither of you currently controls? Both leaders stared at him. I reviewed the geological surveys, Daniel explained. The disputed border zones have mineral concentrations equal to or greater than either of your established territories, but because you are both so focused on keeping each other out, neither of you has been able to exploit those resources. He pulled up another display. This one showed economic projections. If you established joint operations in the disputed zones, both of you would profit more than you would from exclusive control. The infrastructure costs could be shared, the security concerns would be mutual, and neither of you would need to go to war. And looked at the projections, then at each other, then at the calm human who had just redefined their entire conflict. Joint operations, said slowly, that would require trust. Yes, Daniel agreed, it would, but you do not need to trust each other completely. You only need to trust that cooperation serves your interests better than war. In the observation gallery, Counselor turned to Ambassador Helen Carter. How does he do this? Helen watched Daniel work below. He used to be a crisis negotiator on Earth, hostage situations mostly, talking to people who were prepared to kill and making them choose not to. But these are not criminals. These are legitimate leaders with legitimate grievances. Daniel says all violence comes from the same place, Helen explained. Fear, anger, pain. The circumstances change, but the core is always the same. People hurt each other because they cannot see another way. And he shows them another way. He shows them what they cannot see because they are too close to their own emotions. He makes them look past their anger and fear and see the truth underneath. Helen's expression was somber. He is very good at it, too good sometimes. What do you mean? I mean that what Daniel does requires him to understand violence intimately, to know exactly what drives people to hurt each other, to see into the darkest parts of the mind and find the levers that control behavior. Helen paused. Human soldiers are dangerous because they can kill you. Daniel is dangerous because he can make you see yourself clearly, and for some people that is much more frightening. Below, Daniel was answering questions from both leaders. His voice remained calm and patient. He never raised it, never showed frustration. But there was something in the way he spoke that made both powerful leaders lean forward and listen. Something that suggested this gentle human knew exactly what would happen if they chose war, and that knowledge made them very, very uncomfortable. The negotiations continued through the afternoon. Daniel guided both leaders through economic models, security frameworks, and resource-sharing agreements. The atmosphere in the room had changed completely, and were not friends, but they were no longer enemies preparing for war. Lieutenant Karen Shaw, Daniel's assistant, entered the conference room during a scheduled break. She carried data files that Daniel had requested. The young woman moved quietly, placing the information on the table without interrupting. As she turned to leave, a junior officer from the delegation stepped forward, blocking her path. He was young, barely old enough to wear his uniform. His scales were rigid with tension. "Human," he said, his voice sharp, "you think you are so clever, coming here telling us what to do, acting like you understand our people better than we do." Karen stepped aside politely. "Excuse me." But the officer moved with her, staying in her way. "I know your species. I know what you are, predators from a death world. You speak of peace, but it is a trick. You want to weaken us." The room had gone silent. Other delegates turned to watch. Daniel remained seated, but his eyes were on the young officer now. His expression had not changed, but something in his posture shifted. "Let her pass," Daniel said quietly. The officer turned to face him. "Or what, human? Will you show us the violence your kind is famous for? Will you prove me right?" Daniel stood slowly. He did not move toward the officer. He simply stood and looked at him. The silence in the room deepened. "What is your name?" Daniel asked. The question seemed to surprise the young sub-lieutenant. "How old are you, sub-lieutenant?" 24 cycles. "Have you ever killed anyone?" The officer's scales rippled with confusion. "I am a soldier, of course I have." "In combat?" "Yes, border patrol. 3 raiders tried to cross into our space. I stopped them." Daniel nodded slowly. "So you killed 3 beings because you believed you were protecting your people. You believed they were a threat." "They were a threat." "Perhaps," Daniel said, "or perhaps they were miners who got lost, or refugees fleeing violence, or scouts who did not know they had crossed a border. But you killed them, so you will never know for certain. You will spend the rest of your life wondering if those 3 beings deserved to die." Scales had begun to change color, shifting to a pale gray. "I did my duty," he said, but his voice was less certain now. "Yes," Daniel agreed, "and if your commanders order you to go to war, you will do your duty again. You will kill more beings, dozens, perhaps, maybe hundreds, and each time you will tell yourself it is necessary, that you are protecting your people, that you have no choice." Daniel took one step forward, not threatening, but deliberate. "But here is what no one will tell you, sub-lieutenant. After the war ends, whether you win or lose, you will remember every being you killed. You will see their faces when you close your eyes. You will wonder if they had families, children, people who loved them and will never see them again because of what you did." The young officer was shaking now. Around the room, other delegates watched in uncomfortable silence. "That is what war means," Daniel continued, his voice still gentle but carrying weight that made everyone listening feel cold. "It means creating ghosts that will haunt you for the rest of your life. It means becoming someone you did not want to be. And the terrible thing, sub-lieutenant, is that once you do it, you can never go back. You can never unknow what it feels like to take a life." He paused, letting the words settle. "So when you ask me if I will show you violence, the answer is no, not because I cannot, but because I understand exactly what violence costs, and I refuse to pay that price unless there is absolutely no other choice." Stood frozen, his scales had turned completely gray, the color of shame and fear among his people. "My assistant is going to leave now," Daniel said. "You are going to let her pass, and then you are going to sit down and think very carefully about whether you want to go to war, because if you do, you will become someone different, someone who carries ghosts, and I promise you that burden is heavier than any weapon you will ever hold." The young officer stepped aside. Karen left the room quietly, returned to his seat, moving like someone in a dream. Supreme Commander looked at Daniel with new understanding in his 3 eyes. "You speak as if you know these things personally." "I do," Daniel said simply. Before anyone could ask more, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. The calm, professional voice of the station's AI came through the speakers. "Security alert. Multiple unauthorized vessels detected approaching the station. All personnel report to designated safe zones immediately." High Arbiter stood quickly, his elderly face showing concern. "This is a neutral station. Who would attack us?" Daniel was already moving toward the communication panel. "Karen, report." His assistant's voice came through, tense but controlled. 6 vessels, medium size, configuration matches Syndicate raiders. They are not responding to hails. Station defenses are preparing to engage. Around the room, delegates were panicking. Some tried to leave, others shouted questions, but Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone remain calm. The station has shields and weapons. You are safer here than in the corridors. Safer, Premier demanded. The Syndicate does not attack unless they mean to kill. They are assassins and criminals. Yes, Daniel agreed, which means they are here for a reason. Karen, can you determine their target? Scanning now, Daniel, they are positioning around the conference section, the section we are in. The room went silent except for the alarms. Every delegate understood what that meant. The raiders were here to kill the peace negotiators. Someone wanted to make sure the war happened. His hand moved to his sidearm. We must evacuate immediately. The corridors are not safe during an attack, Daniel said. Moving now could expose you to exactly what they want. So we wait here to die, snapped. Daniel looked at the Premier calmly. No, you stay here where the station's shields are strongest. I will handle this. You had come down from the observation gallery. You are a peacekeeper, human. What can you do against armed raiders? My job, Daniel said simply. He turned to Karen. Where is Captain Holland? The security vessel is 30 minutes out, too far to help immediately. Understood. I need you to coordinate with station security. Get civilian evacuation started, but keep it calm. No panic. Daniel, you cannot face raiders alone. I do not plan to face them at all, he said. I plan to talk to them. Ambassador Helen Carter had entered the room during the chaos. She looked at Daniel with concern. Are you sure about this? No, Daniel admitted, but people are going to die if someone does not try, and this is what I do. He moved toward the door, but Helen caught his arm. Daniel, they do not negotiate, you know that. Everyone negotiates, Daniel said. They just need the right motivation. He left the room before anyone could stop him. In the corridor outside, station security officers were taking defensive positions. Their leader, a veteran named Sergeant Vex, looked at the human with surprise. Commander Price, you should be in the safe zone. I need to speak with the raiders, Daniel said. Speak with them, sir, with respect. They will kill you on sight. Perhaps, Daniel agreed, or perhaps they will listen. Either way, I need you to give me access to the station's communication system. Specifically, I need to broadcast directly to their ships. Vex stared at him. You want to talk to them while they are attacking? Yes, that is insane. Probably, Daniel said, but I am going to do it anyway. Will you help me? Something in the human's calm certainty made the hardened security officer nod. The communication station is 2 corridors over. Follow me. They moved quickly through the station. Around them, other security teams were setting up defensive positions. Civilians were being guided to reinforced sections. The professionalism of the response was impressive, but Daniel knew it would not be enough if the raiders made it inside. The communication station was a small room filled with equipment. Daniel sat at the main console and began working. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. How do you know how to operate Galactic Assembly communication systems? Vex asked. I read the manual, Daniel said, 3 weeks ago when I knew I was coming here. He activated the external broadcast system. A light turned green, indicating his signal was being transmitted to all vessels in range. This is Commander Daniel Price of Earth, speaking to the approaching vessels. I am a peacekeeper assigned to the Galactic Assembly. I am unarmed and speaking on behalf of all beings on this station. The alarms continued blaring. No response came from the raiders. I know why you are here, Daniel continued, his voice steady. I know who sent you, I know what you were promised, and I need you to understand something before you continue your attack. He paused, but his eyes never left the console. If you attack this station, you will kill diplomats, civilians, and security personnel. Most of them will be unarmed. You will succeed in your mission, but in doing so, you will also ensure your own deaths, because the moment you fire on this station, you will become enemies of every government in the Assembly. There will be no hiding, no sanctuary, nowhere in the galaxy that will be safe for you. Still no response, but Daniel could see on the scanner that the vessels had slowed slightly. They were listening. However, if you withdraw now, you have an option, Daniel said. The Assembly is aware that you were hired to do this. We know you are not the architects of this plan. If you leave peacefully, we can negotiate. You can provide information about who hired you in exchange for clemency. You can walk away from this alive. Sergeant Vex leaned toward Daniel. You cannot promise them clemency. You do not have that authority. They do not know that, Daniel said quietly. Then he continued broadcasting. You have 60 seconds to decide. Stay and die as assassins or leave and live as witnesses. Choose carefully because this is the only offer you will receive. The station shook as something impacted the shields. Weapons, fire, they were testing the defenses. Daniel's expression did not change. He simply counted silently, waiting. At 53 seconds, one of the vessels began to turn away. At 58 seconds, another followed. At 60 seconds, all 6 vessels changed course and accelerated away from the station. Vex stared at the scanner in disbelief. They are leaving, all of them. How did you do that? Daniel deactivated the broadcast and stood. I gave them something more valuable than money. I gave them a way to survive. But you cannot actually offer them clemency. You said so yourself. I cannot, Daniel agreed, but Captain Holland can, and I suspect he will be very interested in learning who tried to sabotage peace negotiations with hired killers. The sergeant looked at the calm human with something close to awe. You planned this. Before they even attacked, you knew what you would say. I hoped I would not need to say anything, Daniel corrected, but yes, I prepared for this possibility. Someone has been profiting from this conflict for 12 years. I knew they would not let peace happen without a fight. He started walking back toward the conference room. Vex followed, still processing what had just happened. Commander Price, I have fought battles for 20 years. I have seen warriors do incredible things, but I have never seen anyone stop an attack with only words. Daniel glanced at him. Warriors fight battles, peacekeepers prevent them. Different skills, same goal. And which is more dangerous? The human was quiet for a moment. I think that depends on who you ask. The conference room erupted when Daniel returned. Delegates surrounded him, all talking at once. Some wanted to know how he had stopped the attack. Others demanded to know who had sent the raiders. A few simply stared at him with expressions that mixed respect and fear. High Arbiter raised his hands for silence. Please, everyone, Commander Price, can you explain what just happened? The Syndicate sent raiders to kill everyone in this room, Daniel said simply. They have been profiting from the conflict between thee and for years. When I showed both governments evidence of manipulation, someone decided to eliminate the problem permanently. Premier's scales turned dark red again, but this time the anger was not directed at They tried to murder us, all of us, to protect their profits. Yes, Daniel confirmed. Did they really leave, asked, or is this a temporary retreat? They left, Daniel said. They will not return. By now they know that human security forces are coming, and they made a calculation. The money they were offered was not worth dying for. Ambassador Helen Carter stepped forward. Daniel, you promised them clemency. You do not have authority to make that deal. I know, Daniel said calmly, but Captain Holland does, and I suspect he will honor my offer in exchange for information about who hired them. As if summoned by his name, a holographic communication activated in the center of the room. The image showed a stern-looking man in human military uniform. Captain Greg Holland commanded the security vessel that protected human interests in this sector. Commander Price, Holland said, I just received surrender requests from 6 vessels. They claim you offered them a deal. I did, Daniel confirmed. They have information about who orchestrated the attack on this station. Information that leads directly to who has been sabotaging peace efforts for 12 years. Holland was quiet for a moment. You know I should arrest you for making unauthorized promises on behalf of the Assembly. Yes, sir, but you will not. Why is that? Because you want the same thing I do, an end to this conflict, and these raiders can give us that. The captain smiled slightly. You are right, I am authorizing the deal. My team is bringing them in now. They will provide full testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. Thank you, Captain. Do not make a habit of this, Daniel. The universe does not need more cowboys playing diplomat. Understood, sir. The communication ended. Daniel turned back to the assembled delegates, who were watching him with various expressions of shock. So, Counselor said slowly, you stopped an armed attack, forced trained killers to surrender, and obtained evidence against those who have been manipulating this entire conflict, all without firing a single shot. That is my job, Daniel said. Your job is terrifying, replied. In the hours that followed, the situation developed rapidly. The raiders, eager to save themselves, provided detailed records of their contracts. The evidence pointed to a network of corrupt officials and business interests who had been profiting from the conflict for over a decade. But the immediate threat was not over. While most of them had fled, intelligence reports indicated that a smaller, more dedicated group was still on the station. These were not mercenaries looking for easy money. These were true believers, fanatics who would complete their mission regardless of cost. Station security tracked them to a civilian section near the main residential quarters. Families lived there, children, innocent beings who had nothing to do with the political games being played. "They have taken hostages," Sergeant Vex reported grimly. 15 civilians, including 4 younglings. They are demanding a shuttle and safe passage. "How many hostage takers?" Daniel asked. 3 that we can confirm, heavily armed." "What are their demands?" "Safe passage and 20 million credits, standard ransom scenario." Daniel studied the security displays showing the area where the hostages were held. It was a residential common area designed for families to gather. Now it was a cage. "I am going in," he said. Every security officer in the room turned to stare at him. "Absolutely not," Vex said. "Commander, with respect, you are not trained for hostage rescue operations." "You are right, I am not trained to rescue hostages." Daniel's voice was calm. "I am trained to talk to the people holding them. These are fanatics, they will kill you." "Perhaps, but if you send in tactical teams, they will definitely kill the hostages. This is what I do, Sergeant, let me do it." Ambassador Helen Carter had been listening from across the room. She walked over to Daniel, her expression worried. "Daniel, this is different from the raiders. Those were professionals who could be reasoned with. Fanatics do not respond to reason." "Everyone responds to something," Daniel said. "I just need to find what motivates them. And if you cannot, then the tactical teams go in and we hope they can save most of the hostages, but I need to try first." Helen looked at him for a long moment. She had known Daniel for 3 years. She had seen him talk down armed criminals, diffuse international incidents, and prevent wars through nothing but words and understanding. But she had also seen the cost it took on him, the weight he carried from all the times he had to look into the darkest parts of the human mind. "Be careful," she said finally. Daniel nodded. "Always am." He approached the sealed door leading to the hostage area. Behind him, security forces took positions, ready to storm in if things went wrong. Daniel opened a communication channel. "This is Commander Daniel Price. I am a human peacekeeper. I am unarmed and I am coming inside to talk. Please do not shoot me." A harsh voice responded. "Stay out, human. We have hostages. We will kill them if you interfere." "I understand," Daniel said, "but I would like to talk. That is all, just talk." "We do not negotiate." "I know you are loyalists. You believe in completing your mission no matter what. I respect that dedication." Daniel kept his voice calm and respectful. "But I think there has been a misunderstanding about what your mission actually is. May I come in and explain?" "Silence, then you have 2 minutes. If you have weapons, we will kill a hostage." "I have no weapons," Daniel said truthfully. The door opened. Daniel walked in slowly, his hands visible and empty. The scene inside was grim. 15 civilians huddled in one corner, their faces showing terror. 3 held weapons, positioned to cover all angles. They wore the symbols of the Syndicate's most extreme faction. The leader, a veteran named Rax, pointed his weapon at Daniel. 2 minutes, speak." "Thank you," Daniel said. He did not look at the hostages. He focused entirely on the 3. "I want to understand something. You took this contract because you believe in your cause, the Syndicate's power, its influence. Am I correct?" "The Syndicate is our life," Rax said. "We do not abandon our contracts." "I understand, loyalty is important, but let me ask you something. Who gave you this contract?" "Our superiors." "And who gave them the contract?" Rax hesitated. "I do not know. That is not my concern." "It should be," Daniel said, "because your superiors, the ones who sent you here, are not loyal to the Syndicate. They sold you out." "Lies." "Is it your companions, the other who came with you? They surrendered to human forces an hour ago. They provided evidence about who hired you. And do you know what that evidence shows?" Rax's grip on his weapon tightened. "It shows that the beings who hired you are the same beings who have been bleeding the Syndicate dry for years," Daniel continued. "They used your organization as a tool, made you do their dirty work while they kept the profits. And when this mission went wrong, they left you here to die or be captured. They do not care about you or your loyalty. You are disposable to them. You lie to confuse us. Do I? Daniel pulled out a small data device, moving slowly so they could see he was not reaching for a weapon. This contains financial records seized from your companions. Your superiors received 50 million credits for this operation. How much did they pay you? The three exchanged glances. Daniel could see doubt creeping into their expressions. 2 million, Rax said quietly, split between the three of us. 2 million out of 50, Daniel said, and you were supposed to do the most dangerous part, the part that would definitely get you killed or captured. Does that sound like loyalty to you? Rax lowered his weapon slightly. What do you want from us? I want you to think clearly about what you are doing. You took hostages because you need leverage. You need a way off this station. But even if I give you a shuttle, where will you go? The syndicate has been exposed. Your organization is being investigated by every major government. Your superiors have abandoned you. And the beings you are holding hostage, they are innocent families who have nothing to do with any of this. Daniel took a step closer, his voice becoming gentler. So here is what I am offering. Put down your weapons, release the hostages. In exchange, I will personally guarantee that you are treated fairly. You will not be tortured or executed. You will have legal representation. And most importantly, you will have the chance to testify against the people who used you and betrayed you. And then what? Rax asked. We spend the rest of our lives in prison. Perhaps, Daniel admitted, but you will be alive. Your honor will be intact because you chose to protect innocent lives instead of following orders from people who betrayed you. And you will know that you helped bring down the corrupt leaders who destroyed your organization from within. He paused, letting his words sink in. Or you can fight, you can kill these hostages and make your last stand here. Security forces will come in, you will die, the hostages will probably die, and you will be remembered not as loyal soldiers but as murderers of children. Is that the legacy you want? The room was silent except for the quiet sobbing of one of the young hostages. Rax looked at the families huddled in the corner, then at his companions, then at the calm human standing before him. How do we know you will keep your word? Rax asked. You do not, Daniel said honestly. You have to decide if you trust me, but consider this. I came in here alone and unarmed. I put myself at your mercy. If I wanted to trick you, I could have sent soldiers. Instead, I came myself because I believe that you are not murderers. You are soldiers who were betrayed, and you deserve better than to die for people who do not care about you. Another long silence. Daniel did not push. He simply stood there, calm and patient, letting them make their choice. Finally, Rax lowered his weapon completely. He looked at his two companions. They nodded. We will surrender, Rax said, but only to you, not to the security forces. Agreed, Daniel said. He activated his communication device. Sergeant Vex, they are standing down. I need you to hold your position. I am bringing them out. Vex's voice came through, tense. Confirmed, we are holding. Daniel turned to the hostages. You are safe now. Please move toward the door slowly. Security will escort you to safety. The families began to move, some crying, others too shocked to react. As they passed Daniel, several reached out to touch his arm, whispering thanks. He acknowledged them with small nods but kept his attention on the three. Your weapons, Daniel said. Please place them on the ground. The three surrendered their guns. They looked defeated but not broken. Rax met Daniel's eyes. Why did you come alone? They asked. You risked your life for beings you do not know. Because that is what peace costs, Daniel said quietly. Someone has to be willing to take the risk. Someone has to believe that words can work when everyone else reaches for weapons. And someone has to show people like you that there is always another choice. He led them toward the door. As they emerged, security forces surrounded them, weapons ready, but Daniel stayed between them and the soldiers. They surrendered to me, Daniel said firmly. They will be treated with respect. Vex looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. The three were taken into custody without violence. Ambassador Helen Carter approached Daniel as the area was secured. That was incredibly reckless. It worked. This time, one day it will not work, Daniel. One day you will walk into a situation like this, and the person holding the gun will not listen. I know, Daniel said. His voice was tired now, the calm mask slipping slightly. But until that day comes, I have to try. Because if I stop believing that people can choose peace, then what am I doing here? Helen put a hand on his shoulder. Saving lives, that is what you are doing. Around them, the security situation was being resolved. The hostages were receiving medical attention. that were being processed, and the peace negotiations could continue. But everyone who had witnessed what happened understood something now. They understood why humanity had sent this particular representative, why they called him a peacekeeper instead of a soldier, and why that difference made him more terrifying than any warrior could ever be. 2 days after the hostage crisis, the conference room on Axis Prime had transformed again. The tension that had defined the early negotiations was gone, replaced by focused determination. Premier and Supreme Commander were not friends, but they were no longer enemies preparing for war. Daniel sat quietly in his usual place, watching the two leaders work through the details of their agreement. They had been at it for hours, hammering out specifics of joint mining operations, shared security protocols, and economic cooperation. It was tedious work, but necessary work, the kind that actually prevented wars instead of just delaying them. High Arbiter entered the room, his elderly face showing satisfaction. The Assembly has reviewed the preliminary framework. It is acceptable. Both governments are prepared to sign. Scales rippled with colors that suggested cautious optimism. After 12 years of conflict, we will have peace. It seems almost impossible. Peace is always impossible, said, until someone makes it possible. Both leaders looked at Daniel. The human had barely spoken during the final negotiations. He had simply been present, answering questions when asked, offering suggestions when needed, but his presence had been enough. Neither leader wanted to disappoint the quiet peacekeeper who had shown them the truth about their conflict. Commander Price said, "The Assembly would like to formally thank you for your service. Without your intervention, we would be counting casualties instead of drafting treaties." "I appreciate that," Daniel said, "but the credit belongs to Premier and Supreme Commander. They chose peace when war would have been easier. That takes more courage than anything I did." Stood and walked over to Daniel. He extended his hand in the human gesture of respect he had learned during the negotiations. "You did more than help us avoid war," said. "You showed us that we had been manipulated for years, that our anger was being used against us, that the beings we should have been fighting were not each other but those who profited from our conflict." Daniel shook his hand. "I simply provided information. You made the choice." "You made the choice possible," corrected, also approaching. "Before you came, we could not see past our hatred. We were blind to everything except our grievances. You opened our eyes. And saved multiple lives in the process," added. "The hostages you rescued have asked to meet you. They want to thank you personally." Daniel's expression became uncomfortable. "That is not necessary." "Perhaps not," the Arbiter agreed, "but they wish to do it anyway. You walked into a room with armed fanatics to save beings you had never met. That means something to them." Before Daniel could respond, Ambassador Helen Carter entered with news. "The investigation into the syndicate has expanded. Based on the testimony of the surrendered raiders, authorities have identified 37 officials across 6 governments who were accepting bribes to sabotage peace efforts. The corruption went deeper than anyone suspected." 37, repeated. 37 people willing to let thousands die for money. "Yes," Helen confirmed, "and they would have succeeded if Daniel had not exposed them." Counselor had joined the gathering. The warrior looked at Daniel with an expression that mixed respect and something close to fear. Commander Price said, "I have been thinking about something you said to Sub-Lieutenant, about violence and ghosts, about the cost of killing." "Yes. My people are warriors. We value strength and courage in battle, but I have never heard anyone speak about war the way you did. You spoke as if you understood violence intimately, but also found it abhorrent. How is that possible?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. Around him, other delegates had gathered, all listening. They wanted to understand this human who could stop armies with words. "I used to be a crisis negotiator on Earth," Daniel said finally. "My job was to talk to people who had taken hostages, people who were desperate or angry or scared, people who were prepared to kill because they saw no other option." He paused, his eyes distant. "I was good at it, very good. I could read people, understand what drove them, find the words that would make them choose life instead of death. For 8 years, I saved hundreds of lives." "That is admirable," said. "Until it was not," Daniel continued, his voice quieter now. 8 years into my career, I responded to a hostage situation at a school. A man had taken 32 children. He had weapons, explosives. He said he would kill them all unless his demands were met." The room had gone completely silent. Everyone could hear the pain in Daniel's voice, carefully controlled but present. "I talked to him for 6 hours. I thought I was making progress. I thought I understood him. I thought I could save everyone." Daniel's hands clenched slightly. I was wrong. He killed 4 children before tactical teams could stop him. 4 young beings who should have had full lives ahead of them, dead because I could not find the right words fast enough. Helen Carter moved closer to Daniel, her face showing concern. Daniel, you do not need to tell them this. They asked, Daniel said simply. They deserve an honest answer. He looked up at the assembled delegates. After that day, I could not do the job anymore. I would stand outside hostage situations and freeze. The fear of making another mistake, of saying the wrong thing, of failing again, it paralyzed me. So you stopped, said quietly. For 2 years, Daniel confirmed. I left the crisis response team. I worked normal diplomatic assignments, safe things, places where my mistakes would not cost lives. What changed? I asked. I realized that fear was making me a coward, Daniel said. Those 4 children died because I failed them, but how many more would die if I let that failure stop me from trying? How many lives could I save if I found the courage to keep doing this work? He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars beyond the station. So I became a peacekeeper. I trained myself to be better, to understand psychology at a deeper level, to read situations more accurately, to never make the same mistakes again, and I made myself a promise. Every life I saved from that moment forward would honor the ones I could not save. The delegates listened in silence. They finally understood what drove this human. He was not fearless, he was terrified, but he chose to face that terror every day because he believed it was necessary. That is why you are frightening, said slowly. Not because you are violent, but because you understand violence so completely and choose to prevent it anyway, even when it costs you, even when it means facing your own failures. Violence is easy, Daniel said. Any being can choose to hurt others. It takes no special skill or courage. But choosing peace, especially when you have the power to destroy, that takes strength, that takes discipline, that takes looking into the darkest parts of yourself and saying no. He turned back to face them. Humans are dangerous as warriors, yes. We come from a harsh world. We know how to fight and survive. But our greatest strength is not our capacity for violence. It is our capacity to recognize that violence should be the last option, not the first. To understand our enemies well enough to make them our allies instead. To choose the harder path of peace because we know the true cost of war. Premier approached Daniel again. Commander Price, the collective would like to request something. Yes. We have several ongoing border disputes with other governments. Minor ones, but they could escalate. Would you consider serving as a mediator for those negotiations? Supreme Commander stepped forward as well. The Empire has similar conflicts. We would also request your assistance. High Arbiter smiled. It seems your services are in high demand, Commander. Daniel looked at all of them. I appreciate the confidence, but I am only one person. I cannot be everywhere. Are there others like you? Asked, other human peacekeepers. Helen Carter answered for him. Yes, Earth has trained hundreds like Daniel. We have been deploying them across the galaxy, quietly working to prevent conflicts before they escalate into war. Daniel is not unique. He is just the first one many of you have met. The delegates exchanged glances. The implication was clear. If this one human could stop wars and expose corruption and save hostages, what could hundreds of them accomplish? That is terrifying, said honestly, and wonderful. It is necessary, Helen replied. Humanity learned the hard way that war costs too much. We fought ourselves for thousands of years before we finally understood that cooperation serves everyone better than conflict. Now we try to help other species learn that lesson without paying the same price we did. Daniel moved toward the door. If you will excuse me, I have a shuttle to catch. My next assignment starts in 3 days. Another conflict? Asked. A border dispute between the Commonwealth and the Praxis Unity. They have been exchanging threats for 2 months. The Assembly thinks it might escalate to violence soon. And you will stop it. I will try, Daniel said. That is all I can promise, to try. As he left, the delegates stood in silence, processing everything they had learned. Finally spoke. I have served the Assembly for 40 cycles. I have seen countless wars, witnessed more violence than I can count, but I have never met anyone quite like Commander Price. Because humans are unpredictable, suggested. No, the Arbiter corrected, because he represents something most species have not achieved. The understanding that true strength lies in restraint, that knowing how to destroy gives you the moral authority to refuse destruction. Most warrior species become addicted to violence, but humans, at their best, become addicted to preventing it. Looked out the window where Daniel's shuttle was preparing to depart. My people have a saying, the most dangerous warrior is one who has nothing left to lose, but I think humans have a different philosophy. What is that? Asked. The most dangerous being is one who has lost much but still chooses to protect others from the same loss, because that being understands both the power to destroy and the will to preserve, and that combination is unstoppable. On the observation deck, Sub-Lieutenant watched the human shuttle depart. The young officer had spent the past 2 days thinking about what Daniel had said to him, about ghosts and choices and the weight of violence. His commander approached, nodding the thoughtful expression. "Are you well, Sub-Lieutenant?" "Yes, sir," said. "I have been thinking about transferring to diplomatic services. If this war had happened, I would have followed orders. I would have killed beings who were not my enemies just because I did not know any better." "That is what soldiers do." "Perhaps," said, "but the humans showed me that there is another way, a harder way but a better one. I want to learn how to be like him, how to prevent wars instead of fighting them." His commander was silent for a moment, then he nodded. "That is a worthy goal, Sub-Lieutenant, a very worthy goal." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. Beings who had witnessed what Daniel Price accomplished were asking themselves difficult questions about violence and peace, about strength and restraint, about what it truly meant to be dangerous. And in government halls and military academies, analysts were studying humanity with new eyes. They had known humans were dangerous as warriors, everyone knew that, but now they understood something more frightening. Humans were dangerous because they had learned to weaponize peace itself. They had turned understanding into a tool more powerful than any gun. They had made compassion terrifying by combining it with an intimate knowledge of violence. A human warrior could kill you, that was frightening but comprehensible. But a human peacekeeper could look into your soul, understand your deepest motivations, and convince you that your entire worldview was wrong. They could make you question everything you believed. They could turn your allies against you and your enemies into friends. They could dismantle your justifications for violence and leave you with no choice but to acknowledge the truth. And perhaps most terrifying of all, they did it while genuinely caring about you. They were not manipulators or schemers. They truly believed that everyone deserved a chance at peace, even their enemies, even those who had hurt others. That combination of power and compassion, of understanding and conviction, of knowledge and moral certainty, made human peacekeepers something the galaxy had never encountered before. 3 weeks later, Daniel Price successfully mediated the dispute between the Commonwealth and the Praxis Unity. Not a single shot was fired. Both governments agreed to joint resource development and mutual security arrangements. The pattern repeated across dozens of conflicts. Wherever human peacekeepers went, wars became negotiations, violence became understanding, enemies became partners. And slowly, carefully, humanity began teaching the galaxy something it had not known before, that the true measure of strength was not how much damage you could inflict, but how much damage you could prevent. That the most dangerous being in any conflict was not the one most willing to fight, but the one most committed to stopping fights before they started. And that humanity's greatest gift to the galactic community was not their technology or their military might, but their unwavering belief that every conflict had a peaceful solution if you were brave enough to find it. The aliens had thought humans were dangerous because they came from a death world and knew how to fight. They were right, but they had not understood the full implications of that danger until they met peacekeepers like Daniel Price. Humans who had seen the worst their species could do to each other, who carried the weight of those they could not save, and who chose every single day to prevent others from experiencing the same pain. Those humans were not just dangerous. They were unstoppable. Because they fought not with weapons but with hope, and hope, as it turned out, was the most powerful force in the universe.